Gender-based violence is any act of gender-based violence that results in, or is likely to result in, physical, sexual or psychological harm or suffering to women. This includes threats of violence, coercion or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private. This definition covers a broad range of acts occurring in the family, including battering, sexual abuse of female children, dowry-related violence, and marital rape. Violence is often not seen as such by the person experiencing it, in particular in societies where it is considered normal.
My husband slaps me, has sex with me against my will, and I have to conform. Before being interviewed, I didn't really think about this. I thought this is only natural. This is the way a husband behaves.
Violence has an impact on women's lives and on the lives of their children. Often women cannot really leave the relationship.
So I take a blanket and I spend the night with my children out in the cold because he's hitting me too much. I have to take the kids to stop him hitting them too. I will go out in the fields and sleep there all night. I have done that more than 10 times.
Gender-based violence occurs within the general community. It includes rape, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, trafficking in women, and forced prostitution. It also applies to physical, sexual, and psychological violence perpetrated or condoned by the state wherever it occurs. Violence against women is a violation of women's human rights, a cause and consequence of gender inequality, and a major cause of women's ill health. It is a detriment to their well-being, very often a crime, and a significant cost to the resources of the wider society. As a consequence, there are policy issues across the whole range of subjects that concern governments. These issues are particularly important in the areas of crime, health, family, education, and economic well-being. Violence affects many women around the world. According to a survey carried out in 2006, in Italy almost 7 million women between 16 and 70 years of age have suffered physical or sexual violence in the course of their lives. This is almost 32% of women for this age group. In the last 12 months alone, more than 1 million women have experienced violence, totaling 5.4% of all women in Italy. The highest rates of violence are among the youngest. 16.3% of women between 16 and 24, and 7.9% of women between 25 and 42 reported suffering violence. 3.5% of women experienced sexual violence, and 2.7% experienced physical violence. 74,000 women suffered from rape or attempted rape in the last 12 months alone. The magnitude of this data surprised Italian policymakers, who are now taking the issue more seriously. They have realized a need for new policies to address issues of violence against women in Italy. Sound statistical data is critical for the development of appropriate policies, legislation, and services for women affected by violence. Over the past decade, progress has been made in documenting the extent and nature of violence against women. While a great deal has been accomplished, there are still challenges and gaps in worldwide knowledge on this issue, due in part to the lack of standardized methods and questionnaires for data collection. Sources that have traditionally been used to measure violence against women provide only a limited picture because they reflect only those crimes that are reported to officials. They are limited to physical and sexual crimes and do not include psychological violence. Although how the administrative records evolve depends on changes made to the legislative framework, still some improvement can be made in the registration process itself to separately record gender-based violence, for example domestic violence. Given the sensitivity of the subject and the predominant culture where domestic violence may not be seen as a crime, women underreport the offences, particularly those committed at home. For this reason, statistics based on reported cases heavily underestimate the level of violence. As revealed in the 2004 Canadian General Survey on Victimization, only about 1 in 3 women assaulted by partners reported the assault to police. Besides not reporting to official agencies, women also often cannot even find support in their own direct support network because of the attitude of blame.
If I protest, I'll be marked in the society, and then my daughter wouldn't be able to get married. If I voice my protest, the community will blame me for not bearing it in silence. This helplessness is a torture in itself.
Surveys are a better tool to collect information on violence against women, since they allow women to be questioned by other women, and because it is the only way to get data representative of the population. These surveys provide the opportunity to gain a better understanding of the magnitude and characteristics of the problem. The involvement of the national statistical systems in violence against women surveys can be seen as an indication of a political will to measure the magnitude and the different forms of violence against women in a particular country. The involvement is strongly linked with the willingness to put violence against women on the government's national agenda. 17 of the 60 countries participating in the Conference of European Statisticians have conducted surveys to measure violence against women. Surveys have revealed that violence has different manifestations, namely physical, verbal and emotional, and that there is variation in the level for each type of violence, as shown in the 2000 French survey. The most commonly occurring type of violence is that of psychological pressure. The wording and the number of questions used to identify women who experienced violence affect the quality of the results and particularly the validity of the estimates of the number of women who have experienced violence. Surveys need to ask about experiences with violence in behavioural terms, not simply whether respondents have been the victims of violence or have ever been assaulted or sexually assaulted. Providing multiple opportunities for disclosure will help to counter the reluctance or hesitance of many women to talk about their experiences. Single questions have been shown to undercount rates of partner violence and sexual violence, which women are naturally reluctant to discuss. A good example is the module used in Statistics Canada to measure physical domestic violence. During the past 5 years, has your partner 1. Threatened you with his or her fist or anything else that could hurt you? 2. Thrown anything at you that could have hurt you? 3. Pushed, grabbed or shoved you in a way that could have hurt you? 4. Slapped you? 5. Kicked, bitten or hit you with his or her fist? 6. Hit you with something that could have hurt you? 7. Beaten you? 8. Choked you? 9. Used or threatened to use a gun or knife on you? 10. Forced you into any unwanted sexual activity by threatening you, holding you down, or hurting you in some way. A critical issue in measuring violence against women is to consider the time frame of violence. Lifetime and 1 year are the most commonly used reference periods to study violence against women. Different results do occur with different time periods. With longer time periods, more incidents will be measured, but problems with recall and telescoping events outside the period are more likely to occur. A broad range of information on the type of violence should be collected and should not be limited to rape and partner violence. Different measures of severity and frequency of incidents should also be obtained. As shown in the 2002 survey of domestic violence against women in Spain, a broad range of types of violence was considered, ranging from physical, sexual, and psychological, which distinguished between control and yelling. The highest prevalence of partner violence is yelling. Less attention has been given to other forms of violence, such as economic violence, stalking, dowry-related violence, crimes committed in the name of honour, violence in armed conflict settings, or trafficking of women for sexual exploitation. Because these forms of violence occur less frequently or in specific populations, they are difficult to study using population-based methods and are thus best addressed through other methods. The relationship between victim and perpetrator is key to classifying the type of violence. The majority of surveys measure intimate partner violence, which is defined as violence perpetrated by current and former spouses, cohabiting partners, dates, and boyfriends. Many surveys have the objective to identify all perpetrators, including those who are not intimate partners. As shown in the 2004 German representative study of violence against women, physical violence is predominantly carried out by persons known to the woman. Approximately half of the women victimized since the age of 16 named their attackers as their male partners or ex-partners. Friends and family members are also frequently mentioned perpetrators. The impact of the violence on the victim is important to measure. Many studies include measures of severity determined either by actual injuries or by declassifying the acts according to their risk of injury. The 2004 Canadian General Social Survey provides an example of how impacts can be measured. The majority of women who have experienced violence are physically injured, but the emotional and psychological impacts of violence can be even more devastating and long-lasting than physical injury. The findings for Canada are shown in the table. There is also ample evidence that violence has long-term health consequences.
I suffered a long time and swallowed my pain. That is why I'm constantly visiting doctors and using medicines. No one should have to do this.
Violence increases the risk for suicidal thoughts and attempts.
I don't feel well and I just cry. There are times that I want to be dead. I even thought of killing myself or poisoning myself and my kids, because I think if I have suffered that much, how much would my kids suffer if I am no longer there?
When implementing surveys to measure violence against women, special attention needs to be taken to preserve the privacy and safety of respondents and interviewers. This has a large impact on avoiding non-responses, but it is also an important ethical issue. It is necessary to speak with women when they are alone or in a safe situation and to ensure their privacy. There is evidence that interviewers' characteristics and training contribute to data quality, ease disclosure of respondents' experience of violence, and improve confidentiality of the information and safety of the respondent. Experience with interviews on violence against women has shown that despite the sensitivity of the topic, it is possible for interviewers to collect reliable and valid information provided they are sensitive to the issue and have received appropriate training. Interviewers have an ethical responsibility not to endanger a woman whose violent partner may learn of the nature of the interview. Through training and experience, interviewers will be better skilled to ensure the necessary privacy to continue with questions about violence freely and safely. A survey that is dedicated solely to violence against women is likely to produce the most reliable results on magnitude and characteristics of violence. On the other hand, it is cheaper to append a module on violence against women to a survey that is already established. If ad hoc modules are appended to ongoing surveys, then careful consideration needs to be given to the following issues. A full instrument, and not only a limited number of questions, has to be added to the ongoing survey. The safety of women should not be compromised. The ongoing survey should deal with similar topics, such as health or victimization. The Demographic and Health Survey is an example of where a module has been successfully included in a larger survey. This survey is implemented in many countries around the world. Where a module on violence against women has been included, it can provide comparable results. There are no internationally accepted standards on measuring violence in women in surveys. These are much needed. A great deal of work has been undertaken by a number of international agencies to develop standard survey modules. The Conference of European Statisticians has established a task force to look into the issue of establishing indicators and methodologies to measure violence against women. UN Resolution 61/143, approved by the General Assembly on December 19, 2006, requires the UN Statistical Commission to take a leading role in identifying standard indicators to measure violence against women and to encourage national statistical officers to have a more active role in collecting and disseminating statistics in this area. This proves there has been increased attention and commitment to the topic by both the statistical community and advocates, and by defining and better developing statistics to measure the problem, violence against women can be brought to light, and data can then be used to influence policy and programs to respond to and prevent violence.